Hello and welcome to the She Boss Cafe podcast. This is Susan Trumpler, and I cannot tell you how glad I am that you're here for this episode. I'm glad you're here because I love it when people listen, but I'm even more glad you're here because today's topic is so important. It's not only important to how you increase your visibility in your business, how you grow your audience, but it's also important on how to become an authority in whatever niche that you're in. You need to become the go-to person that people are going to want to work with because you want them to believe that you are the person who has, and I'm doing air quotes here if you could see me, the secret sauce for what they've been looking for. We've talked about this before. There's so much noise in the marketplace. So establishing your authority by speaking is huge. So I'm so excited to have Kimberly Crowe, who is the founder of Speakers Playhouse. And I couldn't even say it any better than the way Kimberly's website has it. Speakers Playhouse is a wicked cool 90 minutes of electrically fun, free, delightful, gamified networking with other amazing speakers. Did I get it right, Kimberly?
Absolutely.
And I'm not kidding you. It is electrifying when you're in the room with Kimberly. She has so much energy and so much knowledge about speaking and about, what it takes to bring people together, to find those events and be able to find the stages that you should be on. So Kimberly's going to share with us today the strategies around how to master finding the 4 stages that you can get onto right now to increase your audience size tenfold. Kimberly Crowe, it's so good to have you here today. Thank you for
I'm
coming.
delighted to be here. Thank you so much for having me, Susan. I love your community. I love your title, She Boss. I think it's absolutely fantastic. I am delighted to be here.
Thank you, Kimberly. Is there anything else you would want to tell the folks about yourself? Because I know my bios are usually a little bit on the casual side. Anything else we need to know about you before we get started?
No, I'm probably a lot like your existing the membership, the people who are there. I'm an international inspirational public speaker, but I'm a serial entrepreneur. And I think that's what a lot of folks are because, being an entrepreneur is sort of an iterative process, right? But I've had the benefit of being able to speak on over 5,000 stages, including TEDx in Las Vegas. And I produce events and opportunities for other people to get on stages because I believe that if you're not sharing your magic with the world, then it's not going to have the impact that it could have before you leave the planet. And I feel like the best, most fun way to do that is by getting on other people's stages and speaking about what your passions are.
Fantastic. I love this. Kimberly, 5,000 stages is a lot of stages. Do you remember when you started? Like, how did you start? How did you find your first stages? Like, can you walk us through how you've grown to where you are?
Sure. Well, if you ask my family, they will say I came out of the womb sharing my opinion and I never stopped. But I do remember the very first paid speaking opportunity I had. And that was when I was 10 years old. My brother and I sold tickets to a magic show in our backyard for 10 cents a piece. We made $1.70 and we were rich, man. That was a good day, right? And that was a really fun opportunity to create a stage and be on stage. So I started really young.
Wow, that's good. All right. What was your next stage, Kimberly? Maybe the one where you became a real, I don't want to belittle the, 10-cent tickets, but a real entrepreneur.
They all count. Well, actually, I've been a paid actress. I was an actress in plays. I've been an audiobook producer and narrator. I have done I've announced for equestrian polo tournaments, but speaking for business is really its own sort of its own animal. But there are a lot of different opportunities that are out there to really share your passion with the world. It really needs to be about you, not somebody else's script that you're reading.
Got it. Beautiful. So today, what I thought we could do to really, give as much to our people as possible in the time we have is let's explore those 4 stages that you think people need to get themselves on. And then I'd like to save just a little bit of time to talk about how do they get started? Where do they find them? And what do they say once they do find these stages?
Oh, great questions. Yeah, absolutely. So we can just get into it. So stage number one is probably the most common. Many people have heard of it, and that's speak to sell. A speak to sell stage is where you would get on somebody else's stage. That could be a podcast, radio show, TV show, web summit, webinar, real live in-person stage where you're in front of an audience and you have a microphone over your ear. Any of those opportunities to speak to somebody else's audience, it could be a speak to sell opportunity. Now, speak to sell has sort of gotten a bad name because most coaches and entrepreneurs and healers, they don't like the word sell, right? They don't want to feel like they're selling stuff. And the truth is nobody likes to sell, nobody likes to be sold to, but we all like to buy stuff, right? So
Right.
we are a consumer economy, but we want to buy the stuff that's right for us. So a speak to sell stage, many people think of it as, somebody getting on a stage and throwing up a bunch of PowerPoint slides saying, I have this part and this part and this part, and it's worth, each one of them is worth $10,000. But if you buy it all right now, you can get the whole price for $6.99 or whatever it is, right? And that is a speak to sell stage. The good news and the bad news are the same news. It works. It works very effectively. So a speak to sell stage does not have to be that, though. Any stage where you can bring people along on their journey of learning a little bit more about you is a speak to sell stage, as long as you're eventually leading them to your program, product, or service. So if you have something that you're passionate about, like speaking or like health coaching, or about how to run a business better, or how to stay within the confines of the law when running a business, whatever your particular subject matter is, if you're passionate about that, getting on a stage and sharing your knowledge with the audience creates you as an expert, and then leading them to the next natural step that they can take in their buying journey with you. Now, that next natural step might be buy my stuff, but it might not. It might be grab my downloadable, or check out my website, or let's meet for a coffee chat. Or if you're on a live in-person stage, it might just be, I'd love to talk with you about this. I'll be here all week. Meet me in the back of the room.
Mm.
It can
So
be really anything.
when you talk about speak to sell, then
Mhm.
you're talking about specifically making a financial, like a program offer, or also a free offer? Is that also considered speak to sell?
It is, as long as you are moving them along on the journey to buy something eventually. So if you give them something free at the end of their talk, then hopefully that's moving the conversation forward in some way for them to continue to know more about you. Now, here's the thing, and we'll deep dive on stage number one, because it's really the one that's most appealing usually to this particular group. The other ones we'll go through a little bit more quickly, but Google, you don't even have to listen to me. Google did a study on the zero moment of truth. They call it the ZMOT, zero moment of truth. What does it take for the average buyer right now, with the advent of the internet, to make a buying decision? And it used to be, there was an old saying in sales that it takes 8 to 12 touches before somebody will make a buying decision. You probably know that one, and I know it from my history. But now with the internet, there's a lot more that we can do. And as consumers, we're going to check it out in a variety of different locations, and we want to know a lot more about you before we make a buying decision. So they've found that it is 7, 4, 11 are the magic numbers. It takes 7 hours of research or education before they'll make a buying decision on average. It takes an average of 7 hours. That means maybe they found out about you on a podcast like this one, and then that was 20 minutes that they listened to. But now they're going to get more information, so they'll need a little bit more than that. The second one is 4. They need to find you in 4 different locations. So it's not that you can just email them once and email them again and again and again. They're going to want to know that you're more than just an emailer, right? They're going to check you out on LinkedIn, maybe Facebook. Maybe they'll see if you have a YouTube channel. Maybe they'll see if you have a podcast or a talk out there somewhere. Maybe a TEDx, maybe a variety. It could be a variety of different things. Maybe you've written a book. Maybe you've have an audiobook out there. All of those are different locations where people can find you to know that you're for real. And the last one is 11. It takes 11 different touches on average for people to make a buying decision. So if you make an offer at the end of your talk and people don't grab it, That's okay. That was just one touch. But if they grab it, that's actually two touches and two different locations. So a
Mhm.
speak to sell opportunity gets you a really great in-depth connection with your audience, because we'll have maybe 10, 15 minutes on a podcast, maybe an hour. And then they'll have the email that comes from you. That's the link that they opted in for. They'll hit your website to grab the link. They might open the email and it's maybe an audio file or a video of you teaching something else. So all of those are different touches, different experiences. And then one other that we sometimes overlook is a referral from somebody else. So they might check out, they might call you and be like, Susan, is Kimberly really everything she says she is? What's your experience with her, right? So that conversation is more time, more touches, and a different location.
So good. Kimberly, do you think, or no, I'm going to rephrase that. How important is it to have continuity in the messages of those touches? For
Oh,
instance, what you're saying from the stage, going to what you're actually offering, going to the nurturing of it. How do you guide people along that pathway?
that's a really good question. So, as an entrepreneur who's had a lot of different businesses, switching topics can be really unnerving. You can be like, I'm not sure my audience really wants to learn about this. So, switching over and over again is probably, like bringing them from your podcast to that you were talking about speaking to something else where you're talking about college entrance exams or something. They're going to unsubscribe, right? But if it's sort of along the same lines and it fits with your personality and your initial message, I think like we understand that things morph over time. Look at Coke and New Coke, and then New Coke went away and it was Diet Coke. Now it's Coke Zero. And it's like, so we understand that things change and we're okay with that. We just don't want you suddenly to sell us, frozen peas or something, right? We just don't understand that. So as long as it's along the same vein, we do understand change.
I love that. So, and the reason I asked that question is it's part of what I was had on my mind earlier around like, what do you speak about? But it
Mm.
sounds like there's actually a natural path to figure that out, working backwards from your program into.
Boy, that's a really good question. I believe that most entrepreneurs are verbal processors, which means we speak and then we understand. Like we have to speak it out loud to figure out what we actually mean. And as we talk it out and somebody else asks us questions, it clarifies it for ourselves about what we really want. So when I first started in this business, my company was called Entrepreneurs Rocket Fuel, because I was all about helping people create new businesses. And eventually I realized that people can create businesses all day long, but part of the business is selling. Part of the business is growing your authority. Part of the business is getting the word out there globally so that you can be a success. And so I was very passionate about, okay, well, let's get you on stages, because that way you can verbally process, figure out what you're doing, figure out what you really want to sell, and then go from there. But all of that, my transition was done by figuring it out along the way, by speaking and teaching on new stuff. And people would ask me, like, how do I get on stages? What do I say when I get on stages? Where are the stages? How do I approach a podcaster? And I thought, wow, this stuff, while it seems easy to me, and your stuff probably seems easy to you, other people just don't know the steps. And so that became my passion.
Very cool. Oh, thank you so much. All right. What's the second type of stage?
Second type of stage is the brass ring of speaking. Everybody would love to get this one, in my opinion. There are so many people who clamor to get this one, and it is the paid speaking gig. Paid speaking gigs are amazing. That is, you get paid for just the juicy goodness that comes out of your mouth, right? You don't have to deliver a program, product, or service, but you actually get paid to deliver knowledge. And this one, the way to profit from this one is actually to make sure that you are calculating your dollars per hour worked, So when you are getting a speaking gig, a lot of people will say, well, I want that $5,000 keynote. And that's great. But there's a lot of other opportunities to get paid speaking gigs out there. In fact, your audience probably has already done many of them, not just keynotes, but some of the examples I gave. Like I was a paid actress. That's a paid speaking gig. I was narrating audiobooks. That was a paid speaking gig. I did equestrian polo announcing. That was a paid speaking gig. I taught on total quality management to corporations. I actually gave talks on that and did 3-day events on that. And I was paid to do that. That was a paid speaking gig. So there's a variety of different ones. If you were a teacher, if you were a fourth grade teacher, like my mom was a fourth grade teacher, that's technically a paid speaking gig. The problem is that you have to calculate your dollars per hour worked. So for me, when I was an audiobook narrator, I got paid $400 per finished hour, which sounds like a ton of money. That sounds like a lot of money. But when you calculate that the finished hour is the book after it's completed and done, before that, you have to read the book, you have to audition for the book, and you have to audition for many books, right? Then you have to audition for the book, and then when you get it, you read the full book, so there's time there. Then after you've read the full book all the way through to know what happens, then you start narrating it, you make mistakes, you correct it. Then after it's completely done, you have to edit it, you have to change it into certain chapters, you have to do audio monitoring on it, and then you upload it, and then you announce it, right? So there's all kinds of work that goes into it. And so by the time you're all said and done, it works to about 10 hours for every hour worked. So that $400 an hour goes down to $40 an hour really quickly. The thing is that if I auditioned for one and got it, I'd make $40 an hour. But if I have to audition to 20 before I get one, then that dollars per hour goes significantly lower. So calculate your dollars per hour worked.
Perfect. Oh my goodness. So how do you find paid speaking gigs?
Believe it or not, there's many more out there than you think. There are right now more speaking opportunities than there are speakers to fulfill them, that are keynotes, that are actively applying for these keynotes. That's why you see keynote speakers speak at multiple different locations, because they already have their act together. They already have their one sheet. They already have their headshot. They already have their bio and their intro. They have a sizzle reel. They have all this stuff ready. And so now that they've created all of that, they go and apply for multiple gigs. They're not just, like, oh, my Toastmasters group is they need a keynoter, and this is the first time I'm doing it, so I'm putting it together, right? And then they don't apply for anything else. Once you've done the first keynote, then my suggestion is apply for a whole bunch more.
Mhm.
That opportunity can be really powerful. So when you go out, you can actually just search. And I recommend actually speaking to associations, because when you speak to an association, oftentimes they have multiple regional ones. So you could speak to the Rotary Club at one location, but Rotary is everywhere, right? So you can speak at a lot of different associations. Realtor associations, if you can help realtors become not secret agents anymore, right? To land more gigs, to convert more customers, to be able to help people and get referral business. If you can help them do that, then you can speak to lots of different associations to be able to do that. So I recommend going for associations first.
Awesome. Let me touch on the resources that you went through very quickly in regards to when you're pitching yourself to speak. You mentioned your bio, which is easy, but then you said a speaker one sheet and a sizzle reel.
Mhm.
What's happening in the industry right now in regards to sizzle reels? What's needed? What's working well?
Yeah, great question. So usually the paid speaker will have two kinds, actually three kinds of videos that they have at the ready. The first one is a sizzle reel, which is different shots of them speaking on different stages. Um, Virtual stages count.
Mm,
This counts, right? As long as you can get the footage of you speaking on that stage, that would count. But you want to show a mix. You want to show that you've spoken in person. You want to show that you've spoken online. Maybe you have some shots of podcasts that you've been on and some audio that runs over it. Usually that's about 2 to 3 minutes long tops. And you just want to have lots of different images of you speaking. It will also have your talk titles on it, usually somewhere, and your contact information. That's your sizzle reel. Then you're going to have an intro, which is what they play when you come onto a stage. So if you've ever seen Tony Robbins come onto a stage, before he comes on, there's a big video that plays about how amazing he is, right? So that's an intro reel. And then you have actually a full presentation that is usually about 30 minutes. Your full presentation is you on stage delivering your talk somewhere, because sometimes a speaker booker will ask to see your entire talk. And so they'll want to listen to the whole thing, not just a little snippet.
wow. Sounds like a lot of work, Kimberly.
Well, the more you do it, the easier it is.
Like you said, once you have it, then you've got it for anything that you want to be able to apply for. I love
And
it.
not every paid speaking gig, like the audiobook narrator jobs, they don't ask for a sizzle reel, right? So there you can get plenty of paid speaking gigs before you actually are getting keynotes. You're
Great.
ready for stage number 3?
Already.
But stage number 3 is an authority stage, And your audience may know this. Most common one I usually get when I'm with a live audience is TEDx, right? TEDx instantly gives you authority and credibility by the very speaking on it, right? The very active speaking on it. When you are a TEDx speaker, that should go in your bio, that should go on your website, that should go everywhere. TEDx actually does give you the authority of speaking in a particular area. Here's the trick with TEDx though. TEDx, you cannot get paid to do a TEDx, and you cannot do speak to sell. You can't. In fact, if you allude to a program, product, or service that you sell, it actually gets canned. Like it never gets released by TEDx. They will not release it. You can say, I spoke on a TEDx stage, but nobody will be able to watch your TEDx because it's copyrighted material by them. And your talk is your own. You can give that talk elsewhere, but they can't see you speak on a TEDx stage because you violated their rules. So if you can't get paid to speak, and you can't do speak to sell, how do we profit from this one? Now, I did promise you, Susan, that I was going to talk about how to profit from each stage. So I will tell you that the way you profit from this one is by getting the word out everywhere. Make sure people can watch it. Make sure people can view it multiple times. Have them comment on it, like it, share it. Have them review it and have their family watch it as well. If you want to post it on the bottom of your email, you want to post it on your website, you want it on your LinkedIn, you want to announce it on Facebook, you want to announce it multiple times. If you have a book and you've announced that on multiple platforms, the TEDx needs to be announced on all those and more. TEDx is, for me, you're only going to do 1, maybe 2 in your lifetime, right? Kind of like weddings. 1, maybe 2 in your lifetime. You want to make it count. So you got to get the word out everywhere.
It's like the holy grail, when someone says, I've done a TEDx, instant authority, just instant authority. How do you get it? Do you need to have a TEDx coach to prepare you for it, or can you prepare on your own? What's your advice?
Oh, I would never do a wedding without help, and I would never do a TEDx without help either. You need to have somebody coaching you, and I highly recommend getting a paid coach. This is not just your best friend who's going to help you put on this wedding. You want somebody who knows how to do it, and so I actually work with a TEDx coach. If your people want to reach out to me, I will give you the one that I work with. He has given over 12 TEDx's. He's actually landed his 13th TEDx. He's the world record holder in TEDx's. The next runner up is Bill Gates with 8. So if your attendees would like to know more about that, I'll be happy to give that information out. But yes, highly recommend doing a TEDx coach. What was your other question? That one I had to answer that
No, that
fast.
is really good, but how do you find them? Like, I know there's a lot in different cities, but they have different themes, right? So how do you decide like where you want to do it and what you want to speak on?
Yes, so they are listed in a variety of different places. Sometimes you can find them on TEDx websites, but they deliberately make it hard for you. There's not like one listing of all of them because they don't want you just to apply to all of them right away. They want you to pick the one that really is appropriate for you. Ideally, it's in your neighborhood or a neighborhood that you would like to be associated with. Like, for example, I travel full time, but my TEDx was in Las Vegas because it's a well-known city, right? You could do New York or something like that. Those TEDx's are sometimes harder to get into than, say, the Philippines. Philippines have TEDx's in their countries, and it's not hard to get on one. But do you want to do that with your TEDx? I don't know. It's up to you. If that's important to you, awesome. So consider that. And then the theme, you're absolutely right. There are themes like there's one about in San Diego that's happening that's really about the global warming and the environment right now. And so if you have a talk that speaks to that theme, apply to that TEDx, right? Make sure that you apply to one that speaks to your theme. And that's what I would recommend.
How long do you think it would take someone to get prepared with a coach?
I wouldn't do it in less than 6 months. I recommend a year. Longer than that, and you're pretty much just stalling. But 6 months to a year is really a good time frame. If you do it any shorter than that, what happens is you knock one out quickly, and then you're like, oh, I wish I'd known. I would have done this differently. I would have
Mhm.
probably done that. I'm not teasing when I say it's like a wedding. You want to see what other people are doing. You want to do some research on it. You want to really be sure that that's in alignment with what you're going to do long term and what your message wants to be long term. My TEDx changed several times. It was designed to be released in a year, a little less than a year, but we hit COVID. And when COVID happened, they shut down all the TEDx's and everybody went virtual. Well, I didn't want to go virtual. I wanted to stand on the red dot, and that was very important to me. So it actually expanded. We were supposed to go live, I think, in March. Didn't happen until August. But the red dot and the stage are super important. So I wouldn't encourage you to do it virtually. And then the other thing is make sure that they have really good cameras and sound. If your TEDx has bad sound, it won't get a lot of views. Even if
Mm.
it has bad cameras, it's not quite as bad as if it doesn't have good sound. People will not listen to your TEDx if it doesn't have good sound. So check with your provider and find out what they're planning to do for your mic and if they have a backup plan if it doesn't work.
Thank you. Good advice. All right, I think we're rounding the corner on the
Yes.
fourth stage.
So stage number 4 may surprise you, and we'll do this quick because I have a secret fifth stage. The stage number 4 might surprise you and your audience. It's a rehearsal stage. A rehearsal stage is super important for every speaker to get on. I actually love doing podcasts, audio podcasts for my rehearsal stages because it gives me a chance to try out new talks, to have another person there talking it out with me and making sure that I answer the questions that the audience might have that I didn't know they had. For example, you pointed out the question about a one sheet. I one time gave a talk about one sheets, or I gave a talk about the 4 stages, and I dropped the word one sheet. And somebody asked, do I have to have a one sheet before I get on a podcast? And I said, absolutely not. You do not have to have that. And then I just talked about how it was completely unnecessary for podcasts. And then later I saw in the chat and the comments, what's a one sheet? What is a one sheet? How do I get a one? What is a one sheet anyway? Right. And I didn't realize that people didn't know what that was. So now whenever I drop the word one sheet, I am sure to do just what I'm doing now and explain what a one sheet is. And that is, it's a one page, it's actually two-sided piece of paper that you would hand a speaker booker, or you can email it to them now, which has your headshot, your bio, your talk titles. It has your contact information. It has your outcomes and learning objectives. And I think that's it. I think, and contact information. And when you have that all together in one page, you're clear on what you speak on, but also other people can be clear on what you speak on.
I had never thought about a podcast being
A rehearsal.
actually practice, a rehearsal stage for your bigger talks. It's beautiful, beautiful.
Absolutely.
By the way, do podcasts fall into any of the other stages?
So every stage, every podcast could potentially be any of the other stages.
Mhm.
I have not ever been paid to speak on a podcast, but
Mm.
that's not out of the question. I know that some high-end interviewees get paid. Like if you might pay to have Oprah on your stage or some sort of big name, right? You might pay them, so that could potentially be a paid speaking gig. And it could be a podcast that's only released to, say, for example, you have a membership and your podcast is only released to the people in your membership. So they would have to pay in order to get your podcast. So that could technically be a paid speaking gig. It could be a rehearsal stage, and it could be an authority stage. By getting on somebody else's stage, you're getting the authority of having them say, you've got to listen to Kimberly Crowe. She's an expert on this particular area. And you're getting that authority by being referred to them by
Oh,
them. But it's also a practice stage. Now, many people use Toastmasters as practice stages. It's a good one. In my opinion, Toastmasters is great for engineers that are just learning to speak and they don't want to throw up on their shoes when they're talking to their boss or in front of an entire group doing a presentation, right? So, and it is great for that. It's no shame in that. I love Toastmasters. I've been a member many, many years. But in my opinion, people who are coaches need to get larger talk times, right? 7 minutes every 3 months is not going to do it for you. So podcasts, in my opinion, are fantastic rehearsal stages.
Very cool. What do you think about paying to speak?
Oh,
Summits.
absolutely. But it has to be in front of your ideal audience, right? So if you have an offer that you already know converts well, and you have a stage in front of your ideal audience, then absolutely. And you just have to judge it based on the price of the stage, but absolutely, paying to speak can be extremely lucrative. Do you know Brendan Burchard? Are you familiar with? And your audience might be. He's sort of a Tony Robbins kind of guy. He's a young speaker on personal growth. He did he does many, he'll pay to be on a stage any day of the week, right? Because when he drops an offer, he's going to drop an offer and I watched him drop an offer, and in a 20-minute talk, he made $3.5 million in a 20-minute talk. He dropped a 5-figure offer right at 10K and had 350 people in that room sign up right then. It was incredible. So yes, it can be, if you paid $10,000 to speak on that stage, it wouldn't matter if you're making 3.5 million.
Right. So I guess the way to look at it is get your wet behind the ears cleaned out in the free stages, and then be ready to get paid.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's why I recommend podcasts as a rehearsal stage, because generally speaking, you don't pay to be on a podcast. And if you do, don't be on that one first. Be on some free ones first, right?
There are some pay to play podcasts, right? Do you think they're worth it?
It depends. If it's your ideal audience and you have an offer that converts well from other podcasts in front of your ideal audience, then sure, that would make sense, right? If they have but you're gonna want some sort of guarantee with it. If I pay for a stage, I want to know how many people are going to be in the room actively watching me while I deliver my offer. If I'm doing a speak to sell, right? If they say that there's going to be 150 people in the room, that gives me an idea. If they say there's going to be 10,000 in the room, that gives me an idea. If they say we will have 5 people in the room, all right, well, how many people can I convert out of 5? I don't know. Can I convert 50%? Can I convert, what can I convert? And then you sort of have to judge. But the first thing to do is start making those offers from free stages. And then absolutely, I've paid for stages many times, and it's been extremely lucrative for me.
Excellent.
Would you like to know the secret 5th stage? Because I know we're running short on time.
Let's do it.
All right. So your secret 5th stage is your own stage. Your own stage. If you create a stage, you have built your own house that other people can speak in, or you can speak in. And the cool thing about building your own stage is that it can be any of the 4 stages. It can be a rehearsal stage, a paid speaking gig, a pay to play. It could be an opportunity to have other people pay you to speak on it. And it can be an authority stage. It can be any of the stages that you want. So how could it be a speak to sell stage? You can make an offer from your talk, right? You can also make it a paid speaking gig. You could speak only in a private Facebook group and charge to be included in that Facebook group. And if you charge monthly to be in the Facebook group, and then you speak in that Facebook group and drop your juicy goodness in that Facebook group, you have been paid to speak on that stage, right? It can be an authority stage. You can bring in experts to speak on your stage, and then you're the Oprah and they're the guest and they're the expert, right? And people come to you for that authority stage. And it can just be a rehearsal stage. You could decide to go live. The way to make a stage is actually just deciding. You don't even have to do a podcast. You don't have to figure out Spotify or anything. You just decide. And if you decide every week, I'm going to go live on Facebook, maybe it's Mondays at 1 or Tuesdays at 2 or Thursdays at 3 or Fridays at 5. And every week consistently you go live, you've created a stage. You've created your own stage. And then you can invite Susan to come speak on it. Then you can invite your friends to come speak on it, right? You can invite all kinds of folks to come speak on it and share their juicy tidbits with your audience. And you've created your own stage. The beauty of that is that your house, your rules. Did you ever go to slumber parties when you were young? Like slumber parties? Yeah. I did slumber parties and sleepovers, and my parents would say, okay, when you go to their house, it's their rules. If they say dinner's at 5 o'clock, dinner's at 5. If they say it's at 8 o'clock, dinner's at 8. And when they say bedtime is whatever it is, that's when it is. Even if our rules were different at our house, right? So when you have your own show, you have your own rules. With this podcast and all the podcasts that I've been on, it's the show host's rules, right? I have a certain amount of time to get my content in. I'm allowed to make a certain kind of ask at the end, or maybe not. I have to follow the rules of whatever the host says. And when you have your own stage, you make your own rules.
Love it, Kimberly. So that actually leads me to the final question I had for you, and I think it's a really good follow-up. So where do you start? I would imagine practice on your own stage would be a really great place to get a start.
Ooh, yeah. You can, or you can get on some podcasts and just talk it out with another nice human being. This has been just a delight. You are a wonderful interviewer. I have really, really enjoyed our time together. And mostly podcasts are just a conversation with another delightful human being. So I encourage you to do that, and creating your own stage. Absolutely. Going live on Facebook once a week just to practice and get used to it. And if you do it and record it, then later you could put those episodes up on YouTube, or put it out on a podcast if you chose to in the future. But this is a great place to start. If you're looking for podcasts to get on, I have some resources for you.
What would you have, Kimberly?
I'd love to invite your audience to come check out Speakers Playhouse. It happens live every week. It is online live, virtually. It is, you can find it at Speakers Playhouse. There is no charge to attend. It's free every single week from 10:30 a.m. to noon on Thursdays. And every week we drop about 40 different speaking opportunities and stage opportunities. And then as a speaker, you can get on the mic and share what your subject of passion is, what you'd like to speak about, and what kinds of stages you're looking for. So definitely check out Speakers Playhouse.
It's an excellent environment. I can tell you, I've been there many times. I love hanging out with Kimberly and her crew because she's not kidding. There are so many opportunities to network with other speakers and opportunities for speaking. Well worth your time. Thursdays at 1 o'clock Central, right? 2 o'clock Eastern?
You threw me on that. It is 10:30 a.m. Pacific to noon, or Eastern time, it's 1:30 to 3.
There we go.
Sorry,
Sorry.
I had to do the math in my head there.
Anyway, check it out at speakersplayhouse.com. And I believe you have some nice resources for us as well, Kimberly.
I do. Engaging with a virtual audience is much different than engaging with an in-person audience. And why you want your audience engaged is because if they're engaged, they will take action at the end of your talk. If they liked what you did, then they will take action and grab your gift, or meet you in the back of the room, or do whatever you're asking them to do, right? So I have the 10 expert secrets for engaging your virtual audience. So I'm happy to give that. And then I also have one for those of you who are launching a new show. I actually have 10 ways to advertise your new show.
Awesome. And we will have the links to both of those resources in the show notes, as well as just a reminder of speakersplayhouse.com so that everybody can grab that link when they're somewhere in front of a computer. Kimberly, thank you so much for being with us today. It was such a delight to have you.
My pleasure. I loved it. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And if you are listening out there and you have a desire to speak, and you really need some support on how to get there, not only can you lean into Kimberly at Speakers Playhouse, but join us in the She Boss Cafe. We talk all of the time about how to create your messaging, how to know exactly what your avatar wants to hear from you, and also how to have that program that your speaking is going to lead you towards. So I think we could make a good partnership here, Kimberly, between you being able to find stages and me being able to get them prepared. Life is good.
Sounds great.
Awesome. All right. Have a great week, everybody, and we'll see you again here soon.